Can everyone hear me, including those in the back? Okay. It is an honor to be here today, and no more so than to thank Frank. I've heard your name. I've known of your reputation, but to hear you in person, your reputation precedes you, and it's well-founded. I hope you appreciate the amount of expertise that Frank brings to this and the way he communicates it. That's really what I talk about, is how to communicate the information, not the information itself. Because oftentimes the content isn't nearly as important as how you communicate it. So you have a real hero for agriculture and Frank, so thank you very much. It's been an honor to be on the presentation with you. So I'm here today to tell you a story. And the story is about a sea change, a seismic shift, a paradigm change in the way technology, particularly communication technology, has influenced the ability to communicate complex information to people who are largely immune to it for a variety of reasons. To tell you a little bit about myself, I teach at a private, very expensive liberal arts university on the beach in Florida. We don't have a single kid that I know of that comes from a farming background. And the amount of misinformation that we have there is absolutely profound. I'll tell you one quick anecdote from a colleague of Frank's, Joy, poultry scientist. I was in a class where a student made the comment that they get boneless chicken breasts from boneless chickens. They genetically engineer chickens to be boneless. My undergraduate degree from Auburn was in poultry science. I spent my early career with Publix supermarkets in Florida doing consumer relations. So I actually had Joy Mensch call in on the phone to the class and present the information as to why it was improbable that a boneless chicken was possible. To which the student said, "It doesn't matter what you say, I will not believe you." So I'm here to kind of tell you a story today about the emergence of Generation Z. Now, Generation Z, it's a danger. I tell my students, I'm a dinosaur. I have all the social media platforms, but I don't dare post, Frank. I just lurk. I monitor. I stalk. Because you know how easy it is to look like an idiot when your parents or someone older than that actually begin trying to engage on social media. But I have done an enormous amount of research on it, and it's sort of the intersection of public relations, cognitive psychology, social psych, and political science. So we're going to talk about catching some Z's and why it seems like it's very, very difficult to have a discussion about any topic that there could be any contention or even disagreement over. Or more specifically, are you inspired yet? I want to try to tell you a story about how Gen Z consumers understand and communicate about pork. Now we're going to use an example later on about United Airlines killing a puppy and how it blew up the internet. Facts didn't matter. We're going to talk about why that is. So who in here was born from 2000 until now? Raise your hands. Anybody born in the year 2000 to now? How about 1995 to now? Okay, Generation Z is technically defined as the year 2000 to now. It's a generation that did not experience 9/11. And its communication reality is entirely mediated through new personal portable media devices. The influence of that on the ability to communicate information is profound. That's what we're going to talk about. So outline, it's going to be fast and fluid like my presentations. I've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to have to cover it really quickly to kind of give you a format to understand how this generation that will be the new consumers understands information. And sort of like the generation itself. We're going to talk about the context of food and agricultural information, the context itself, and we're going to talk about who Generation Z is. And it's not just a caricature, it's important we understand that. We're going to talk about something in cognitive psychology called punctuated consciousness, the importance of breaking through the clutter with information that is not the way you think it should be packaged. Then we're going to talk about speaking the tribal tongue. We are increasingly disintegrating into internet tribes, and we have to know how to communicate in those internet tribes so we can break through the clutter. Then we're going to give you a case study. We've been doing a number of tests on university campuses across the country, all of them offensive and quite humorous, trying to figure out, is there a way through the use of triggers to break through the clutter and get Gen Z to, for instance, drink milk? So we're going to give you a case study called Teats Out. Okay, consumers aren't what they used to be, very clearly. Okay, I started my career after my poultry science degree at Auburn. I worked with Publix managing their consumer relations. How did it work in the early 80s? You got a letter. maybe a phone call. Now what happens when you have an issue is you have students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, stage die-ins in the meat and produce department of Publix to disrupt their business model because Publix donated to a political action committee that supports the Second Amendment. So we see a sea change not only in the willingness to disrupt consumer and retail operations with food, but the ability of technology to mobilize that disruption. Something's changed. Something else that's changed is I call it the 5 A's. Generation Z lives in a milieu where anyone, anywhere, can say anything, anytime, on any topic, and have the internet amplify it. Everyone is an expert. So in the olden days, like 10 years ago, there was something called the gatekeeping function. There were multiple speed bumps between your idiotic ideas and the public forum. Right? That no longer exists, or my idiotic ideas. So what we have is not only the technological ability to vocalize, we have a sea change where this generation, and the research shows this, sees it as almost a constitutional right to be heard. Now imagine if 20 years ago, your parents had walked around with a Polaroid instant camera, taking pictures of themselves all day and putting them on the wall. You would have thought they were weird. What's the point of a selfie other than narcissistic exhibitionism? So we have an entire milieu that demands the right to be heard. Keep that in mind, and is technologically enabled and internet amplified. That's key as we begin understanding. So now, what's going on out there? Well, here's what we see. You want to understand what protest over products, conflict, people who disagree. Fantastic book by Kozer, social scientist, The Functions of Social Conflict, said oftentimes disagreement and conflict has nothing to do with the content of the argument. In fact, it's secondary or tertiary. In fact, what conflict and protest has to do with is things like identity. Who am I? Who am I going to be? Empowerment. It makes me like I can take control of something in my life. And finally, a sense of belonging. I belong to a community that stands for something. So as religion has collapsed and families have collapsed, what we see emerging are internet protest tribes, for want of a better term. And Kozer was right. And he said the thing being protested is often secondary, or of little consequence compared to the social functions of the conflict itself. Take a look at that picture. Anti-global warming picture. We're about to go through the looking glass, Alice, down the rabbit hole, and hopefully when we emerge, you'll see a new way, or perhaps a way to communicate that breaks through this change in social structure in communication. So what we have is internet-enabled, identity-fueled brand conflict, product conflict. It's not even about the pork. It's not even about the global emissions. It's about something deeper, and so therefore you have to understand the way it's communicated so that you can insert yourself into that communication to give those facts so they are salient. But wait, there's more. That's one of my trigger slides. It didn't work here. I'm a walking trigger warning. I start every class when I teach, first day of class, for you students in here, I said, trigger warning, if I have not triggered everybody in here, at least against about one thing, I have failed. I am a walking trigger. And at the beginning of each class, I put up a slide, and it says it's, and the class says, trigger time. Anyways. Now, these are from a pool of research about characteristics, sort of both demographic, but not so really cognitive characteristics of people born since 2000. And these are your coming consumers who influence opinion. Tech focus, you know this. While Frank was speaking, I walked up to the back of the room to see the number of people surfing on their smartphones. I'm ashamed to say it was a lot of you. Those of you who are teachers, what are they doing when you walk into class? This is their motion. If you can get them to shut off their cell phones during class or their smartphones, what do they do as soon as they leave? They're connected. And the two central values are speed and convenience. Absolutely. All the research shows. Convenience and speed of access to information. You're not going to have deep contemplation. It's just not going to happen. Secondly, it requires visual storytelling, not oral storytelling. Our generation, Frank, grew up in an oral tradition. You tell stories. My wife's German. That's a lot of storytelling tradition. What we're seeing is because of the nature of the media is visual, you have to tell your information visually. Number 3, they receive and process, you know this, information very, very quickly. How quickly do you scroll through your feed? And you're looking for certain patterns that will cause you to slow down and tap. Number 3, or the thing I say, no one in here multitasks. It's impossible cognitively to multitask. You can't take a midterm online and watch Hulu and text your friends all at the same time, contrary to personal opinion. You go between them, your cognition changes. You notice how it is? You'll take the question, you'll watch a little Hulu, you'll text a friend, you'll go back to Hulu or Netflix, and then back over. So it's rapid tasking. What that means is they don't process information in long, linear bites. It's very compartmentalized. Next, what we're seeing is the emergence of anonymous forms of social media. Is Facebook dead for people who are 15? It's beyond dead. So what we're looking is for the ability to post and have it fade very quickly. The Snapchat effect, before we realized Snapchat was saving everything. So apps like Secret and Whisper. I want to post my opinion to my tribe, but I don't want traceability. I don't want accountability of my opinion. So it will fade away. And finally, they're ethnically diverse, we know that, and very pragmatic. Key for you who are going to communicate about agriculture, the pork industry, and products, you must demonstrate direct applicability and benefit, personal benefit, to the Generation Z consumer and their particular tribe. Very, very pragmatic. So that's the characteristics. Now let me move on to the consequences. Take a look at that photo. Now, I'm not a cognitive psychologist, although I had a class in grad school on physiological psychology, which makes me an expert. Here's what we do know. How you process information at an early age helps hardwire the brain on how you'll process it in the future. Look at that picture. Some evidence that neural networks associate and build depending upon visual stimuli versus auditory stimuli. So, how is that infant, when it grows up, going to process information? Here's what we see. Information has to be visually presented in short bursts. What we see emerging is something called digital autism. That unless the information is presented in a format that is easily consumed visually, there's an attention span, not diagnosed attention deficit disorder, but the idea that it's hard to pay attention to the information. So with my freshman incoming classes, I will give them the opening sentence of A Tale of Two Cities. Anyone ever read that? The best of times, worst of times, perhaps one of the greatest sentences ever written in the English language. And ask them to read it and tell me what it says. So what scholars will tell us is we're entering a post-literate culture. Not that Gen Z consumers can't read, but that long-form, ink-based, text-based arguments are almost physiologically difficult to assimilate. We see the closing of minds into digital tribes and validated outrage. All that means is I'm predisposed and go looking for, it's confirmation bias, Frank. We go looking for information that validates what I know to already be. So those are the consequences of the things I described. Now, let's move on to what this means to you. Something called brand narrative. You got to be a storyteller. That's what Frank did, and I want to commend you. I've never heard you speak, and that was outstanding. You have to tell stories. It's not about the individual facts. You have to knit it into a narrative that builds a brand. Now, what is a brand? Here's what it means for you before I give you the definition of a brand. Generation Z consumers, as a generalization, will be predisposed to outrage and triggers. Here's an interesting thing we found in the last 5 years of research. Conflict over something like products, or pork, or the way chickens are raised, or greenhouse gases. The content of the protest is not seen as important as the fact that you belong to a protest itself. Got that? It's not really important, the facticity of the protest, as long as you are seen as digitally active. Anyone ever heard the term slacktivist? A slacktivist is a person who believes that clicking like is actually doing something. That's a slacktivist. Okay? Here's also what we're finding. This generation filters disconfirming evidence and they will actively seek out validating evidence for their preconceived ideas. This is very clear now. We have the disintegration of a generation into digital tribes of people just like me. Although I don't know them personally, I know them on my profile and like page, and they believe and follow the same things I believe and follow. So it's very difficult to break through that tribe. So now how do you do it? Well, the old model, there are three components of building a brand. So the pork board, the pork producers, national milk producers. You had public relations, see if that works. You had PR, which was seen as doing like things like events, the rollout for something. Advertising, which buys time and space for a unique sales proposition, and marketing, right? Four P's of marketing: a product, price, placement, and promotion. And those three work together to get that pork out. And all you had to do is do a better job here, here, and here, and people would listen. That's no longer the case. Every organization and product exists in a social context. So here's the new model. Your public relations regarding pork or milk must constantly be building a favorable social context, telling stories that are visual about the place of your product or organization in the larger society. Because think about this, no one wants to buy Tom's shoes if they're exploiting workers in Thailand. You must build a favorable story about your product or process before you ever sell the product or process. Then yet marketing comes in with product, price, placement, promotion. And finally, advertising buys the time and space with unique sales. What makes our product unique? But if you don't have that narrative in place through which your target audience will understand, you cannot communicate. You've got to be communicating what is the social context of your product or place. So now, let's talk specifically about Gen Z and the pork industry. And this is where it starts getting fun. Because we've been able to do a lot of fun projects, sort of research-based products. What product is this? You know that without seeing the label. That's a brand. When I show you the rainbow, you don't think God's new covenant in the Old Testament. You think the LBTGQ plus. I think I got the acronym correct. I'm not trivializing it. You think of a certain shortcuts. So all a brand is the power to tell your story. And it's a mental shortcut, a heuristic, that differentiates your products, processes, people, services, or values from those around you. It has to be a story or a shortcut. It has to be visual. It has to be concise. You're dealing with 7 to 9 seconds of attention span max before the person moves on in their internet feed. So, Starbucks, the home of all internet outrage. They try red cups at Christmas and they're satanic. They ask a homeless African American male to leave they confront him for no other reason, I believe he was African American and homeless, to leave their store, and you know the outrage. They are sort of outrage focal points. Think about a brand this way. A brand is a set of 2 to 4 traits or attributes that when you hear it, Coca-Cola, they pop to your mind, front of mind issues. You don't think complexly about McDonald's. If I were to show you the Golden Arches alone, you would think something. You would think greasy, good, convenient, regret. Sort of a simple percent. It's great when it happens, but afterwards you feel bad. No. Okay? So think about Starbucks. Think about all that time they spent building that brand. Right? You're willing to spend $7, $8, $9 for coffee. My dad would roll over in his grave if he could. Think in terms of shortcuts. Starbucks spent a lot of time building a certain ambiance so you would spend that amount of money on coffee. Well, the brand is so important that Starbucks had to do a step down training for an entire day on racial sensitivity. It cost them $7 million in one day. Not because they were racist, but the ability of Gen Z to generate outrage almost instantaneously through social media online. So that's the milieu you're facing. That's what you're facing. Now how do we deal with it? Well, it's called brand hypocrisy. Okay, brand hypocrisy is when your brand promises one thing and it delivers something different things. Oh, we care. The pork industry cares, right, Howard? We care. We're all in. We have animal welfare certification. What happens when Fair Oak Farms has one video? It's called brand hypocrisy. I thought you told me that this wouldn't happen. Do they take time to look at the facts? No, because of the new developments. So you must guard against internet hypocrisy. We say we do one thing and we do another. Example, United Airlines was the recipient in the last 2 years of 2 wonderful examples of this. Customer focused, experience focused, we want to help you out. Then there's the guy who was dragged off the plane in Chicago, beaten by the authorities. By the way, United Airlines is going to win this case. It doesn't matter. The facts of the matter don't matter. Because the internet and the way we communicate using it are not given to rhetorical or what I call dialectic discussion. Fact, counterfact, it just isn't. Or the better case I like to use, because I deal a lot with the human-animal bond. The dead puppy. Someone brought, has anyone been flying on a plane lately? It's like on a bus in Uruguay. I mean, I was on a flight, I kid you not, from the worst route in America, New York, Long Island to West Palm Beach. Someone brought an emotional support parrot on board, and it was got loose and was flying up and down the cabin while we were flying. Chaos. Someone brought their companion animal on board that was being disruptive. The flight attendant said, put it in the overhead bin. The puppy died. Internet outrage, fueled by mobile technology, engendered a backlash and boycott from Gen Zers. Okay? Independent of the merits. Okay? So these are typical. So now, what do they have to do? Spend literally millions of dollars repairing that narrative they told. So now, let's bring it home to you in the time I have remaining. What's going on? Gen Z's prone to conflict. They're active over what's called brand justice. Even if you build a brand in pork or milk, they're looking for something to take action about. They abhor brand hypocrisy. So when California is the home of Happy Cows, and it looks like a Chick-fil-A commercial, all it takes is one image to destroy that sort of brand narrative. They're very hard to reach. Think about you and your feed. How much information is coming through to you in a day? Hard to break through. And a not shark-infested, snark-infested, highly immune consumption identity. You want to see someone who's doing this well? Look at Wendy's Twitter feed. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Wendy's has got it right. Their Twitter feed is Frank, follow Wendy's. It is brilliant on how they can communicate information using snark, using the language of their target audience. So how do you persuade them? I'm getting run out of town on a Me Too rail. Like I said, can you imagine my classes? This is an award-winning anti-bovine somatotropin, or RBGH, ad from New Zealand. Not one word was in the entire ad campaign. Not one word. Why was it award-winning? Because with one image, it grabbed your attention, it engaged you, and it made the point visually, not in words. So, here comes your principles of persuading Generation Z for all consumers, but particularly Generation 3. All communication, persuasive communication, comes down to one of 3 A's. Get their attention, get their acceptance, get their action. A3, attention, acceptance, action. The first and biggest step with Gen Z consumers will be getting their attention in the clutter of information. Attention, right? So I'm aware, I accept, and I act. You have to, that's an acronym for all persuasive campaigns. P stands for present the information. A stands for get your attention. C is comprehension. I comprehend, I get what you're trying to say. R is I remember it long enough. To Y, yield to the information. To A, act upon it. All persuasive messages come down to this. But for Generation Z, your coming consumers, these 2 are the most difficult. Getting the information in front of them and getting them to pay attention. Will they click on your information? So that you can present information, SRR, that's simple, relevant, and repetitious. It must be simple enough to be understood, using analogies and elsewhere, simple enough to be understood, relevant to their personal experience, and repeated over and over again. And here you go. This is the key we found in all agriculture and food messages with a younger generation. It must be salient. It must stand out from the clutter. Ask yourself, when you young people, when you fall into the YouTube vortex on a Saturday night, and you're looking for one video, and 7.5 hours later, you're finally done. You're looking for the stuff that stands out, the viral videos, the 14 million hits. So salient, it stands out. Resonant, it makes emotional sense to your everyday experience. And valid, your social community online validates it as important information. Those are the three. Stands out, makes sense to you, your social media communities validate that it's useful information. If you don't do that, they won't listen. So now, here we go. We don't need to see that one. Right? I want to get to this. Teats Out, a conversational campaign targeting triggered Gen Z consumers. As you know, the milk industry cannot get young people to drink milk that actually comes from mammals. Okay, now they talk about, we got to call it almond juice. We got to call it coconut juice. It's not milk, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what they did, we got a grant to use female Gen Zers, not from farms. So we used members of the tribe to completely create their own campaign to try to get people to break through so they'd listen to information about milk and actually try it. So this was, I'm getting pretty edgy here, but this was their idea. They're all women. This was their logo, and this was the theme of their campaign. Teats Out, get the deets on the teats. Now, as you know, that sort of trending social slang, which is very hot sometimes, could be cool another day, but they identified this, and here's what they did. The situation analysis is this. Milk consumption is, as you know, precipitously declining among the young. And the milk industry said, we don't know, we tried everything to try to break through. We said, let me try. Let us try a research project using tribal members, heavy social media users, female Gen Zers from cities or suburbs. And they gave it. So that's the situation analysis, the declining consumption. In many ways, it's like Gen Z in the pork industry. How are you going to break through to communicate these outstanding facts that Frank has? Here was the formula. It requires salience. It has to stand out. Now imagine this campaign took place on a Christian college campus. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, imagine how much that would have stood out. Okay? It was resonant. I'm going to talk about valid. I'm going to tell you how they built validity with simple, relevant, and repeated messages. And here was the model that worked. It's now worked in 3 successive campaigns with cloning, with processed meats, and with milk. We were able to get Gen Z to slow down, access the information, process it, try the product, and longitudinally continue trying the product. Okay? You have to have trending slang. Things burn brightly but quick in the internet Gen Z world. You remember Yik Yak? Came and gone. Things burn quickly. I ask my students, I can't even keep up with it. Like, go for the dough. Show me the dough. Where's the dough? There's these statements that go through squad, my fam. It burns through in a couple of months. Whatever the trending slang is, with highly salient images that are edgy, verging on snarky. They have to be marked by edgy humor, and you give free food. Right? You just can't have, here's a typical ag campus. You have people from AGR or Farmhouse or the Animal Science Club or the Poultry Club to come out, and they think they're going to do free bacon. Now, that's good, bacon's good, and then people will listen. Doesn't work. It has to be linked to trending slang, salient images, and edgy humor. And then you can stake your identity claim. And all that means is, hey, all you got to do is try this. Then after they try the free food, they become receptive to the persuasive message. So, day 1 of the campaign. They began early in the morning by putting red and pink balloons on storm grates all over campus. Older people, you don't know what that comes from. Younger people, it was it. Later today, they started branding those balloons with the Teats Out logo. It was so offensive that older women on campus started coming out, popping the balloons with scissors and taking them down. Exactly. Yes. The students knew what would happen. Now you've generated a controversy. People are starting, what's going on? What's with the balloons? You generate what's called need for orientation. In cognitive psychology, I have to have the need, Frank, to gain the information. You just can't give it to me. All won't click on you. But if I have the pre-existing need, the appetite for the information, they will be information seekers. So now, what the heck? Has anyone heard what's going on? A bunch of older staff members are going around campus popping balloons. Then they had what is this? Pink balloons. Why did they pick the color pink? Breast cancer awareness. So they're going after purposely triggering people. Day 2, we knew it was going to be offensive. The students knew it would be offensive. Day 2 was the milk and cookie comfort zone for triggered Gen Zers. That was its title. They had a place you could come to be comforted in your triggerness and have milk and cookies. Yes, the original plan was to have a farmer's wife come and bake the cookies, a dairy farmer's wife in Florida, and they had udders. You know the little things like the balls you can get that are squeezy, stress balls? They were going to give the udders, they had them all made that were foam. They were pink udders, and they could come, you could squeeze it to play out your triggeredness. But the administration stepped in and stopped them. They felt it was too stinking loaded with meaning. They had a milk shooters contest of different types of milk. So you could put it on Instagram, and the Instagram winner, who got the most hits and the most likes, got a free iPad. Then they had milk pong. Old people don't know what that is. They had a milk pong contest. Again, the person who generated the most interest on Instagram got the iPad. Day 3, they hid pink balls all over campus with numbers on them and a hashtag. You had to, once you found the ball, you had to go online, watch a video about the dairy industry, pass it along to your friends and take a quiz, and then be entered into a huge drawing for a very nice prize, like an iPad plus, what are the ear things Apple makes? Yeah. I just call them earplugs. But anyways, did it go? It goes really well. Overwhelmingly. Overwhelming receptivity. It was amazing the number of people that would engage, drink the milk, say, I never knew it, and then you created what's called message space for a conversation. I never knew this. I didn't know Florida was a dairy state. You have to gain permission through edgy humor, kind of edgy images, snarky humor, and trendy slang with free food, and they will engage. And there's just in a few days the spike in social media activity just on the one little campus where this took place. We're planning one with bacon. The number one, good quiz question, what's the number one stimuli? About 90% of vegans or vegetarians fall back into meat eating with 1 year. What's the number one stimuli causing them to do so? The smell of bacon. We're planning one on a major land-grant university. We're going to have it on the quad. We tried it on a smaller campus. It worked well. We put it right next to the Students for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We fried bacon, had a fan blowing the smell over the quad, and we had all-you-can-eat bacon. And this was not institutional bacon. We had bacon donated. What do you think the response was? 120 people lined up to get a plate full of bacon. With that, because it's funny, and they know it's funny, and it's tweetable, it's social media packaged and Instagrammable, you create the conversation to tell them about bacon. So, to summarize, you face a lot of challenges. Primarily is the clutter of information and the way the upcoming generation processes that information. There's an innate skepticism bordering on cynicism to reject all information that disconfirms what I already know to be true. You can win. This is a winnable situation. And here's what we found. Your messaging is only as good as the social context of your target audience, so you have to be like them. The model whereby you, and I hate to say this, I started my academic career as an extension specialist at University of Arkansas. The model whereby you hire a PhD, female or male, 35 years old, in a lab coat to give information is over. It's dead, and it ain't coming back. Now I know killing academia is like killing bacteria. They just pop up somewhere else. You can't kill academia. But with that being, or even you can't kill any programs in academia. But that being said, the role of the extension specialist becomes sort of an anthropologist professor with graduate students. You have to use an ethnological approach, using members of the tribe that look like them, communicate like them, are what are called digital natives. And they know the domain. They grew up there, they were born there, and you facilitate them and they go out and do it for you. They do the extension work for you among the target audience. You know, the political power of outrage can frame the debate overnight. So I talk to Howard, anybody else, think about Fair Oaks Farms. I actually know the people that, I know them very well, the people that built that place. They really meant it. And they had a Christian worldview undergirding it. Did it matter once the news broke? Right? So the ability of personal mobile media to watch a video to mediate our existence as well as technology has changed things. So Gen Z is tough but doable. So the goal of this, the bottom line, if I had to tell you, use tribal members, look like them, speak like them, grew up in the same jungle that they did, that understand social media, use a salient image, visual storytelling that's humorous and edgy, that they stand back and they go, I haven't seen that before. I looked at 412 videos this week. I haven't seen that one. Then you'll gain permission to give them information that is factual and informational, and they will actually stand back and go, wow, I did not realize that about milk. You mean there's lactose-free milk? Because, you know, everyone's lactose intolerant and gluten intolerant and disagreement intolerant. And so you got to find a way to communicate to them. So that's basically what we did. We just completed a project on cloning, whereby the students created, you know what, I'm not going to ask this, it's hypothetical. Do any of you know anybody that uses Tinder or Grindr? Just hypothetical. They used Pinder. They created an app and a website for a pet dating service. They rolled this out over time, and they had a contest, a voting contest on the sexiest pet. They managed the information so that it would inevitably turn out to be a cloned Bengal cat. They had come meet your date day on campus. The students came. The Bengal cat looked like a jaguar, it was so huge. But what we found was the model worked. It held. Then you revealed to them, this is a cloned animal. It's the perfect match. Don't they deserve love too? And then they were receptive to the information, and we were able to flip their attitudes about cloning in animals exactly mirror opposite. Just because they had personal contact. We got them there, they paid attention, we got them emotional contact with the animal, and then gave them the facts. So it's about simple, relevant, valid, repeated information, topic, message, image, food, to create message space, to tell your story. So that they'll slow down long enough and click on your information so that you can show them what you want to do. Thank you.
All right, if you have a question in the audience, raise your hand and we'll get the box to you. I want to start with a question that I got via text message. How do you keep up the momentum on something like the Teats Out campaign? How do you keep it from fading into the background and keep the engagement?
More money from sponsors. No. You have to do follow-up. Yeah, repetition. You have to do repetition. You can get anybody to try anything one time. The key becomes sustainability of the program. The only one we've taken a look at sustaining on over time programming was a different commodity group. It works as long as you have repetition follow-up. And that was processed meats. And that was a brilliant campaign. The students come up with it themselves. I tell them the concept. They come up with the campaign. And just to give you a quick one there, how we did it, they picked a music festival. Really hip one. They went out, camped at the music festival, and they knew what would happen. What happens the morning after the music festival? Everyone in tents. They're hungover or recovering from being stoned, and they're hungry. They had set up a tent with a local hipster chef who was preparing processed meats, and they were blowing the smell all over the tents with fans. They had hundreds of festival goers, none of whom ate processed meats, lined up, and while they were in line, they were walking along the line, and they had iPads but they were showing them visual, short excerpts on how processed meats are good for you, while the celebrity hipster chef was preparing it for them in ways that they didn't know. Overwhelmingly. And they followed up with it, and once again, they reinforced. You have to do reinforcement. Next question. There's one right here. If you just want to shout it out, I'll repeat it.
You talk about Generation Z. How are they similar and different than millennials?
Similar, they have, right, marketing comes down to identifying needs and wants and trying to shift wants into needs, okay? Same thing. Food, shelter, emotional, yeah, you probably had Maslow's hierarchy and some sort of it. They have psychological, psychosocial, they have the same needs. They have same wants, same desires. What has the only thing, they're almost identical. What has changed is the technological orientation. Millennials grew up in a pre-iPhone era. All of you can probably remember dial-up modems. Now what we see, the mantra is more, faster content. Convenience and speed. That's relatively new. So try to take millennials and their needs and desires and wants to millennials. The other thing that changed is their willingness to adhere to pre-existing identity groups. Catholic, Baptist, Islamic, conservative, liberal. They have a very fluid identity that will bounce among social internet tribes. And they get their primary social validation from social media tribes. But same wants and desires. Belonging, food, experience, fun. Okay, the technology's changed it. Which makes it very, very hard for us in agriculture to communicate and penetrate through that. Yes?
How can we prepare for Generation Alpha?
Generation Alpha. I have no idea. Hopefully by then I will be dead. And one of my graduate students or one of my students will actually try to have the answer. I'm so bewildered now in the classes. How do you prepare for Generation Alpha? I will walk into my class and say, okay, look at me. Listen to me. I am a dinosaur. The meteorite has hit. You're the little rodents. You win. I go extinct. So I said, you're going to help me understand the tribe. I can give you concepts. Same thing will happen there. People our age will understand social science, psychology concepts, but we're not going to understand the tribe. So we're going to get members of the tribe to come and tell you, here's how Generation Alpha works. So you'll take the theory and apply it, and they'll apply it for you. That's the model you're going to have to use. Okay, the old extension model where your expertise based upon a credential from a credentialing organization will buy you credibility, that is gone. That is over. Thank you very much. Any more questions?
How do you penetrate that tribe? You know, the social media influencers and my generation, millennial, Generation Z, we're overwhelmed by them, but they're the type of population that we as a pork industry have a hard time convincing them of our practices, etc., when a large portion of them are on the vegan side, etc.
The answer to that question will cost you $270,000. No. Read the book Social Selling. That's all you need to do. We tried it. Here's one for you. You probably didn't know this. These are the things you don't want to know. There's an entire community of mommy doggy bloggers. They treat their animals like children, and there's mommy bloggers for their dogs. A genetic engineering company, a biotech company, they can't penetrate them. How do you get? So we used an anthropological approach, and it was overwhelming. We got to the point, the students, and it's in social selling. It's very complicated. But the basic part of it is you build relationship, you become a member of the tribe. Here's the process. You follow them after a period of time. You begin to like their content. Over a period of time, you begin to comment on their content and pass it along. You build social media credibility by saying you're valuable. You're the opinion leader. Then over time, they will grant you permission by sharing your content. And we got the woman, I didn't, the students did, live on Facebook Live, her streaming to her thousands of followers. She was opening up her birthday present to her dog live on Facebook Live that they had sent her. Oh, I see, it's Jimbo's birthday. In that box was a branded product from the genetic engineering company. She pulled out, oh, look at this. I didn't realize this company made this. We gained permission from that influencer. We gained permission, and then over time, she was more than willing to shout out the product because it was embedded in her everyday experience. And in the book, Social Selling, it's very easy read. It'll show you, and it's a mind shift from the way we think we're supposed to push information. Anyways, thank you very much, and I want to congratulate Frank again. That's the sort of information that can win the debate if presented correctly. Thank you, Frank.